Now that we understand why it is important to have a full-size test environment that accurately represents our production database, both in terms of the amount of data and the distribution of data, let's turn our attention to how we create such a database in one of our test environments. There are two main approaches that you can consider. The first approach you can take is to copy data down from your production environment into one of your test environments. There are a couple of advantages to this. First, there are tools built into Oracle like the Data Pump utility that are well equipped to export and import large amounts of data. Second, from a development point of view, we know that we are getting data that matches the data that we have in production because, after all, we are using our production data in one of our test regions. And finally, if you work with your DBA, it isn't hard to create some scripts that can automate this procedure so you can refresh your test database on a regular basis. So what do you want to be careful about? Most importantly, this is your production data, and you have to be careful as it could contain sensitive information that really isn't appropriate to have in a test environment. There may indeed be requirements around auditing of who has access to this type of data, or about limiting access to a small subset of individuals, and this tends to be hard to do in a test region. So you will probably be confronted with the problem of needing to scramble or mask some of the data. This could include items like social security numbers, bank account numbers, date of birth, and perhaps even items like email addresses and phone numbers. And for some applications like healthcare, this list may be much longer, so the entire approach may not even be feasible. So if you decide to go with this approach, make sure to work with your IT security professionals to determine what steps need to be taken to protect any sensitive information before you copy this data down into your test environment. The second approach you can take is to use one of the commercially available data generation tools. You can configure these tools to point at your database schema and give them information about the type of data to generate and the appropriate ranges of that data, and they will go about and generate any amount of data that you need them to. The advantage here is that now you don't have any sort of risk of information disclosure from your test environment because all of your data is synthesized. You can also generate any amount of data that you need. So if you're a small company or a startup and you only have a small amount of data in production, but you're expecting some rapid growth, you can use these tools to synthesize a large amount of data so you can conduct performance tests prior to that growth occurring. The downside of these tools is obviously there's a cost associated with them and you need to acquire the tool and install it. And secondly, you will need to invest some time in order to configure the tool and make sure that you're getting the right distribution of data for your database. Overall though, using a data generation tool is probably the better route to go. If for nothing else, then it minimizes the risk of any sort of accidental information disclosure. Information security and the need to protect sensitive information continues to become a bigger and bigger issue for all of us. And so for that reason alone, it's probably worth the time and effort to start learning about the data generation options that are available.